that could be done out of sight.
Just waiting on the light.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on this Friday. You've asked and we've listened, and this edition is about our first responders and how they are enforcing social distancing, responding to calls, and keeping us safe. I want to make a few introductions. To my right is Decatur Police Chief Nate Allen. Chief Allen will provide us with details about the enforcement of social distancing guidelines and keeping our community safe. To my left is Decatur Fire and Rescue Division Chief Tracy Thornton. Chief Thornton will give us an update on how our firefighters are responding to medical calls and answering calls in a new normal. And then currently off camera, he'll sit where I am now. We have with us Decatur Utilities General Manager, CEO, Ray Harden. Ray will speak to the residents about current billing extensions and customer service incentives amid the COVID-19. We also have sign language representative Kelly Halbrooks. And Kelly, thank you for your joining us today as we continue with our updates. So municipal updates, current Morgan County COVID-19 cases are at 23. I contacted Nat Richardson with Decatur Morgan Hospital just to get an update from Nat, and he said that they currently have one positive inpatient, and I know that that positive is included in the, reflected in the count from Morgan County of 23. 7 under investigation, and then Decatur Morgan has tested 32 team members, and all 32 have come back with a negative COVID-19 response. They continue to practice social distancing, restricting visits, and they are now asking team members to wear masks as an individual protective measure. Importance of social distancing, we're a social community, but any contact is a chance for exposure. Warmer weather makes it harder for us to stay indoors, and this is not the time to socialize in person with neighbors. The best way to take care of our family and friends is by following the CDC social distancing guidelines to the very best of our abilities. I want to tell you that you're doing a fabulous job in that, but again, just a reminder that we do not want to become complacent with that. Just continue, just like you're in last place, if you will. A reminder that playgrounds and public athletic courts are closed. As it relates to supporting our small business, please order takeout, delivery, and remember to purchase gift cards. City Hall will still be open by appointment only, with the exception of the police department. A reminder that our garbage routes will continue to operate as normal, and the City of Decatur's recycling program is temporarily suspended. We will resume recycling operations and collections as soon as we can, and if you'd like your recyclables discarded, please place them in a garbage container with your regular garbage and trash, which will be collected on your regular trash collection day. So with that, I want to give my seat over to Ray Harden, and then turn it over to Chief Allen. Chief Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. The biggest thing that we want to stress to the citizens, especially coming from law enforcement, is that this virus is very dangerous. We need people to social distance. We need them to stay away from one another. If there are a large gathering somewhere, be sure and let us know. We will respond to it. We will clear it out. But the biggest thing is we have to get through this together before we can go back to life as we've known it before. Currently, life has changed. Life has changed for all of us. So with that saying, this weekend is coming up. Be sure and stay away from others. Stay close to your family. This is a great time to build stronger family bonds. So stay with your family. Don't pull your neighbors in and go out on your boat. Don't pull your kids' friends in and ride around in the neighborhood and have social gatherings. Don't go to the parks and things. We have to first try to win this battle that we're fighting against this virus before we can start getting back together again. And I know I'm here for questions. We'll probably be getting questions from the media and some of you viewers out there. If you have a question, be sure and ask us any questions that you may have on it. We do enforce it. We enforce it. I'm going to probably repeat this several times. We are enforcing the governor's orders in this way. We're going to first educate the public on what the orders are. We're going to try to give a verbal warning to you. If that doesn't affect the results, then we're going to write you a citation. The last thing we want to do is put anyone in jail. So we want to go through a 4-phase style of enforcement before we actually do anything else, before it leads to an arrest. So any questions that you may have, be sure and ask us on that one. I turn it over to the fire chief now, and we can go from there.
All right. Thank you, Chief Allen. I'd like to say that as the fire department, we agree and go along with everything Chief Allen just said. It's very important that everybody keep your distance. Don't come and have gatherings. Please wash your hands. Stay home. Use hand sanitizer. We stress this so much. It's so important to help keep the spread of this virus as limited as we possibly can. We want the public to know that Decatur Fire and Rescue is responding to calls just like what we always do. If you call 911, we want you to be rest assured that we will have our same professional, qualified people responding to your house to come help you, no matter if it's a fire, EMS call, wreck, whatever it is, we'll still be there. You may see some things a little bit different when we do respond. We have got everybody in our department, when we respond to an EMS call, the primary medical provider on that call will be wearing some type of gown or some type of suit protection. They'll have goggles on, an N95 mask, and of course their gloves that they always wear. If we get there, we do an assessment, and it sounds like you could have some flu-like symptoms or possibly a COVID case. We'll ask you to put on a surgical mask to wear that to help protect us and yourself. We're doing some extra things as far as cleaning. Before we get on the truck, after every EMS call, we use hand sanitizer before we get on the truck. When we get back to the station, we clean the truck, the surfaces that we touch, like the seat belts, steering wheel, those kind of things. And we're also doing extra cleaning of the stations, especially the more common used areas in the stations that we're touching. But we still respond to calls, EMS calls, but we also have put a hold on our education process, our CRR. We're not doing the community outreach to the senior citizens and the senior centers. We're not doing the CPR classes. All that kind of stuff's been put on hold until this is over with. We're all looking forward to getting that started back up and getting those programs going again. But right now we're not doing those things. So once again, just keep your distance and remember to wash your hands. If you got any questions, just let us know.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I'm Ray Harden with Decatur Utilities. Glad to be here. I want to talk a little bit about some of the operational and business changes that we're making and have made to continue operations and providing utility services. The first thing is that we have discontinued the practice of disconnecting service for non-payment. That occurred on March 13th, so it's been about 3 weeks since that's been in effect. And we see that being in effect for the foreseeable future. One of the things that we want to caution customers about is to be sure to pay partial payments and try to stay current as much as you can under this new operating condition, to not fall too far behind in anticipation of us returning to normal operations sometime in the future. Doing business with DU is going to be a little different for a while. We closed our lobby a few weeks ago to the public. We are taking appointments only, but our drive-through lanes are open for making payments and for conducting business with us. You can continue to call our number 552-1400 to reach customer service if you need to start new service or transfer service or turn it off. We've got means to handle all of that electronically or through the drive-through as needed. The drive-through continues to be open during normal business hours, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day. Our employees are working modified work schedules. One of the things we want to really do is protect employees from exposure to the extent we can. So we have a reduced number of employees at work each day, covering emergency services only. There will be some delay in certain routine operations because we're trying to keep everyone safe and keep everyone from having exposure more than they have to. Our treatment plants are fully operational and fully staffed. Our schedules that we operate at our water plant and our wastewater plant are already conducive to this, to the needs of this issue. One of the things we wanted to be sure of, trying to answer a couple of questions that we've seen out there, is that the water is absolutely safe to drink. Our disinfection process, our treatment process would remove and kill any viruses that are in the water. There's no evidence that this virus has been seen in any kind of water. On the wastewater side, we want to reiterate that toilet paper is the only thing that can be flushed. We see an increased occurrence of wipes in the sewer system that causes damage to pumps and clogs in areas, and we want to just ask the public's help in that to keep from creating unnecessary problems both in the customer sewer line as well as the public sewer system and throughout the city. And the last thing I'll touch on is that we're still seeing a lot of scam attempts. People contacting customers demanding payment. Customers need to know that DU will never do that. If they can hang up and call our office and get information about their account, they never need to give payment over the phone to anyone. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. And so now we'll take a few questions.
Police, Chief, has any of your firefighters, police officers tested or infected with quarantine?
Will you repeat the question so
Have any of your firefighters or police officers been tested?
He's asking, has any police officer or firefighter been tested in a quarantine? We've had some exposure within the police department from outside of police work, and they self-quarantined themselves, and then that was it.
We also have had one person that had an exposure from outside of work, and he was sent home according to CDC guidelines and done self-isolation. He is currently, I think, on day 12 of the 14 day of isolation and had no signs or symptoms so far. So we've been pretty lucky in that aspect.
Okay, next question. We're a little delayed in the way that we're doing this. Bear with us, please.
Okay. Oh, like,
Yes, you're on there.
okay. Sorry, I'm trying to listen to this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sophia with Wave 31 News. I know some of the volunteer departments in Madison County were reaching out, needing donations for any PPE equipment. What about the equipment? Are you guys fully staffed with PPE equipment for EMS calls and things like that?
Yes, ma'am. As far as PPE for these calls, we had done a good job ahead of time with what our supplies were, and our logistics people have worked really hard about getting more supplies in. We've had some businesses in the city of Decatur be really good to us and help donate some supplies to help keep us going on things that we were short. But right now, currently, we have sufficient supplies to keep the guys going out and responding to these calls. But as you know, the more calls we go on, the more of those supplies we use. And it's harder to get them back in. We do have some on order, and we're waiting on them to get in. But the more calls we go on, the more we use. And it's just a kind of a play to get the supplies in before we run out, because everybody's wanting the exact same thing that we're wanting. So it is kind of hard to get them, but we're trying to stay on top of that.
Next question.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, this is Matthew Speakman with the Decatur Daily. I know you guys are obviously banning gatherings of 10 or more, but what about people who are having like drive-through church services or drive-in movies? Are gatherings of 10 or more okay as long as they're in their cars?
Chief Allen?
The question is, what about people who are doing drive-through church or drive-through anything? As long as we are staying away from one another, we encourage you to go ahead and stay in your vehicles. They can load either food into the trunk or packages into the trunk or something of that nature. I understand there are some churches that are having a drive-through communion service. We're okay with that one because they still have that social distancing. The biggest goal is the social distancing, to stay away from each other so that we don't spread the virus.
So Chief Allen, with that, would you only travel as a family unit and not, I know that it's in our nature to want to reach out and help those that may not have transportation, but to invite someone else to join you in your car, would that be a wise thing to do?
Yes, for those of you who didn't hear over the microphone, the mayor has asked me what my advice be for people to just stick with their family, not stop and pick up guests and pick up other family members. Yes, I would strongly encourage you all to stick with your immediate family in one car at a time. Do not stop and pick up other members of your family from outside of the home, because when you start cross-contaminating two homes, you have a higher chance of exposure. Do not stop and pick up your neighbors and things and go. One family is what I recommend, one family per vehicle.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Go ahead with your question.
All right. So this question is for Chief Allen, per se. I mean, in the event that someone is found to possibly trying to infect other people on purposely, is there anything that can be done in that instance, or has that been thought about yet?
The question is, if someone is purposely trying to infect somebody else with the COVID-19 virus, is that a chargeable offense? Yes, it is a chargeable offense. Of course, we all know we have some people that are out there that are just not very nice. We would deal with those folks the same way as we would with any other type of infection that they're trying to pass along. It started back when the AIDS epidemic went out years ago, and so there are some statutes on the book that we can actually charge them.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Go ahead with your question.
Hello, are you there?
Go ahead with your question.
My question is, he said there was a four-part process for Chief Allen. There's a four-part process of what they would do to try to make sure that they are enforcing the guidelines of just 10 people or less in a group. What are those?
The question is,
Or what is that process?
the question is, what is the four-part process again for enforcing the order from the governor? The four-part process is, we first want to educate the public on what the order is. The second, we want to give a warning about the violation. The third is then write a citation if the violation continues. And the fourth and last final process would be to make the arrest. Next question.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes, I know the volume of response calls are kind of down, but what calls have been up since all of these guidelines have been put in place? Like, what is the most dominant calls of health issues or property crime or what?
The question is, what type of 911 calls are we receiving mainly? I still think that we have the variety of calls coming in from domestic, through property crimes, through any type of crime, through automobile accidents. The calls are still coming in, and of course in a lesser volume. Of course now we don't have the morning, noon, and afternoon rush hours, so therefore we don't have as many traffic collisions as we would have during normal traffic times. So those calls are down. Of course, some of our property crimes will be down because most people are staying home, so it's very difficult to break into homes when you know homeowners are there. So those crimes, those type of calls and crimes are down. But we still receive calls from people violating the order, people thinking that there's more than the 10 people gathered in one location. People still want to get out and have a basketball game at a court or something of that nature, and the order says no contact sports. So we're still having those type of calls coming in there. But overall, our overall cost for service, as far as police are concerned, are down. Fire Chief.
Much like the police department, our calls have also decreased. We see people staying at home and not getting out as much, and just the overall volume for everything has went down. The one area that we have seen an increase in our calls would be falls and our lift assist that we go to. We think a lot of that has to do with the people who are staying home and at home more, and they are, just the overall calls for lift assist and falls in people's homes, that has went up for us.
Next question.
Go ahead with your call.
Hey there, it's Dallas Parker with WHT again. This question is for Mr. Hardin. I've been doing a number of stories on unemployment issues and issues with getting the money that people are requesting from the state. As far as the disconnections are concerned, I know you guys have discontinued that. How long will people have to pay after all of this passes, do you think? And is there any kind of documentation they can provide to get better assistance once all of this is over?
We've not worked through all of the details. Depending on how long this goes, I think will impact that time frame. We're grateful that there will be some governmental assistance to help citizens with those bills. But we've been dealing with those on a case-by-case basis as kind of our normal operations. I don't see us issuing a blanket time frame for all customers because many customers will be current, and so we'll be dealing with those who are struggling individually and helping them with resources that are available throughout our community.
Thank you. Next question.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes, you kind of touched on this earlier with the pickup games and everything, but about how many calls would you say the police department's received about gatherings of 10 more people? I know we've heard about some soccer games occurring at Point Mallard on the weekend. Have you guys had any trouble breaking those up?
I don't have the question is, how many calls exactly have we received concerning more people gathering than they should be? I don't have the actual number per se to tell you exactly how many calls we have received. And the second part of his question was, did we have a problem breaking up large crowds like soccer games at Point Mallard? No, we don't have any problem breaking up the large gatherings at all. people have been very, very appreciative and acceptance of us coming in there and breaking it up. Remember, the overall goal is to save lives and to not have exposure. And I think for the most part, people understand and don't want to have the exposure rate. If you look around the country and compare state to state, Alabama's still doing a very good job of keeping down the virus, and I want to play our part here in North Alabama so that we do not have an outbreak of cases like has been seen in other areas. So that's the overall goal. Our goal here between both police and fire is to prevent exposure, no matter what. How do we prevent exposure? By preventing exposure, we are actually saving lives. Next question.
Yeah, I do. I was going to ask, you kind of touched on this already too, but what kind of steps is the police department and maybe the fire chief taking to prevent an outbreak within y'all's own staff? I know police departments around the country have been hit kind of hard with the virus, so what preventative measures are you guys taking?
His question is, what kind of preventative measures are the police and fire departments taking to prevent exposure for our staff? We in the police department have kind of a three-pronged approach to this one here. We have the frontline patrol officers. We have a backup crew for the patrol officer, which comes from our special units, such as our vice narcotics and our SROs. And then we have a third wave of officers that comes from our criminal investigations division. So currently, since we have no exposures, and I'm still praying to God and knocking on wood that doesn't increase, patrol officers are out handling limited calls, handling calls on a limited basis, meaning that they are in for PPEs for them and they protecting themselves from it. If they were to go down, then we bring in our second wave of officers who are now in administrative positions so that they won't go out in the field and have a higher probability of being exposed. If that wave goes out and have some issues, then we have the third wave that can go out. That would be our criminal investigations division, but could put on uniform and go out after that one too. So we have it planned out and mapped out in the event of the worst case scenario. And that's something we don't want to see us to go that far, but we have to plan for the worst and expect the best. Fire.
The first thing we do, it starts with our Morgan County 911 dispatch. We have it set up in the dispatch so when they call and start the questioning process of what's wrong with the patient, they ask some questions like, do you have flu-like symptoms? Have you traveled in the last 14 days? Do you have a temperature? Do you have a cough? So they try to go ahead and plan ahead for us before we get on scene so we'll know what to expect when we get there. With that being said, on top of that, like I said earlier, we have required all our guys, the primary medical provider on scene, to put the gown, the mask, eye protection, and gloves on every call, just to make sure. We have taken extra steps at cleaning the stations, cleaning the trucks. We have stopped. Normally we can move people between stations and let somebody that is short at a station have somebody from another station come over and fill that position. We have stopped that. You can only work at the station that you're assigned now, so therefore we don't have any transfer from station to station. We have stopped accepting, a lot of times the community has really been good at the fire department over the years, and they'll bring cookies and cakes and things like that or come by for station visits. We've had to cut all that kind of stuff out. We're not able to accept that at this time. We've also went as far as to not even allow family members and friends to come by the fire stations. We're really trying to keep those guys isolated. We've set up hot, warm, and cold zones in the fire stations. When the truck comes in, that's considered a hot zone. The guys have been asked to not even wear their boots from the hot zone over into the living quarters so they don't track anything in on a cleaned, sanitized area. They've also been asked to take showers when they come in to work in the mornings and before they go home to see their families. That way they're not bringing something in from their home family to their work family and not taking something from their work family back out to their home family. That's a few of the things that we've done so far.
Thank you. Next question.
No, I'm okay.
Very good. Thank you so much for our guests. Thank you to our residents for your prayers for our first responders. And Decatur Utility, we're thankful for the service that you provide for the residents of the city of Decatur. I want to remind that we're in a marathon mentality. And so just think in that way. And we will have our next press conference Monday, April the 8th at 10 o'clock. We hope to see you then. Thank you.